Stars twinkled against the vast darkness of space as the massive Galactic Council flagship, the Celestial Dawn, maintained its position in high Earth orbit. The vessel's sleek, crystalline hull reflected sunlight, creating an awe-inspiring display that would have captivated any observer from the planet below. Grand Admiral Du Young stood motionless at the observation deck, his tall, slender frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. His silver uniform, adorned with the intricate insignias of the Galactic Council's highest military rank, gleamed under the soft ambient lighting. His eyes, enhanced with biomechanical implants that allowed him to see far beyond normal spectrum ranges, studied the blue planet rotating beneath them. Earth, the newest discovery in the Council's expansion efforts, a world that had somehow remained hidden from their sensors until now, thanks to an unusual quantum anomaly in this sector of space. The planet's beauty was undeniable: swirling white clouds, vast blue oceans, and green-brown landmasses created patterns that reminded Du Young of the artistic holograms so popular in the Council's core worlds. Lieutenant Jin Ah's footsteps echoed through the otherwise silent observation deck as she approached her superior. Her uniform, while similarly silver, carried fewer decorations, marking her as a junior officer. The data pad she carried cast a soft blue glow on her face as she studied the information scrolling across its surface. "Another primitive species," Du Young said dismissively, not turning to acknowledge her presence. His voice carried the wariness of someone who had performed this duty countless times before. "They haven't even mastered gravitic propulsion. Their vessels still rely on chemical reactions to escape their atmosphere. Primitive. Inefficient." Jinnah cleared her throat softly before speaking. "Sir, I've been analyzing their communications and behavior patterns since our arrival." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Something seems odd about their behavior. They're remarkably calm about our presence." Du Young finally turned to face his aide, his cybernetic eyes focusing on her with an intensity that made most junior officers uncomfortable. But Jinnah held her ground, having served under him long enough to be used to his scrutiny. "Explain," he commanded simply. "Most species at this technological level react with either panic or religious fervor when we reveal ourselves," Jinnah said, gesturing to her datapad. "There are usually massive social upheavals, economic disruptions, or at least some form of global military response. But the humans—" She brought up a holographic display showing various news feeds from Earth. "They're treating our arrival almost as if they expected it." Du Young frowned, his enhanced eyes scanning the floating displays. Indeed, while there was certainly excitement and interest from the humans, there was none of the chaos that typically accompanied first contact scenarios. No mass panic, no widespread religious conversions, no military mobilization beyond standard precautionary measures. Below them, the diplomatic shuttle carrying Ambassador He Newell and her team had already begun its descent through Earth's atmosphere. The vessel's advanced shielding created a beautiful aurora-like effect as it interacted with the planet's magnetic field. The sight would have been impressive to any primitive species, which was precisely the point. The Council's standard procedure for incorporating new species into their sphere of influence was well established and had worked flawlessly for centuries. First, demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority through a show of force that couldn't be misinterpreted as hostile. Then, offer protection from the various dangers lurking in the galaxy in exchange for resources and compliance with Council regulations. "Perhaps they're simply too primitive to understand the significance of our arrival," Du Young suggested, though his tone betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Jinnah shook her head. "Sir, I don't think that's it. Their scientific community has already begun analyzing our ship's capabilities with surprising accuracy. Their military responses, while minimal, show a level of coordination that suggests extensive preparation for this scenario." Du Young walked closer to the observation window, his reflection overlaying the image of Earth below. In all his centuries of service to the Council, he had never encountered a primitive species that reacted this way to first contact. It was unsettling. "What do their weapons look like?" he asked, more to himself than to Jinnah. "Primarily nuclear fission devices, ballistic missiles, and chemical explosives," Jinnah reported. "Nothing that could threaten a council vessel. And yet they show no fear," Du Young mused. "Either they are incredibly foolish, or—" He left the sentence unfinished as a communication alert chimed softly. Ambassador Haynewell's team had landed and was being escorted to the humans' primary diplomatic facility. The first official contact between the Galactic Council and humanity was about to begin. Du Young straightened his already perfect posture. "Monitor all communications from the diplomatic team. I want to know immediately if anything seems out of the ordinary." "Yes, sir," Jinnah responded, already adjusting the settings on her datapad. As his aide left the observation deck, Du Young remained at the window, watching Earth's slow rotation. Despite his centuries of experience, despite the absolute technological superiority of his civilization, despite everything he knew about primitive species, something about this situation made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. These humans were hiding something, and Grand Admiral Du Young intended to find out what it was. The meeting chamber aboard the Celestial Dawn hummed with tension as Ambassador Haynewell's holographic form flickered before the gathered council representatives. Her usually composed features showed signs of strain, an unusual sight that immediately caught everyone's attention. "The humans are different," Haynewell began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Their chief negotiator, Admiral Tawan, approached our discussions in a way I've never encountered from a pre-gravitic civilization." The council members exchanged glances. Many had been present for dozens of first contact scenarios, and they all knew the usual script. Primitive species either cowering in fear or displaying aggressive posturing before inevitably accepting the council's terms. "Different how?" asked one of the senior council members, leaning forward in his seat. Hanil's hologram shifted slightly as she gathered her thoughts. Admiral Tawan spoke of mutual cooperation and equal partnership, not as a plea or a demand, but as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When I mentioned our advanced technology, he simply smiled and said that different paths of development often lead to complementary strengths. Grand Admiral Du Young, standing at the back of the chamber, felt his cybernetic eyes narrow. This matched the strange behavior they'd observed since arrival. The humans were acting like they held cards no one else could see. Security Chief Su Jin chose that moment to enter the chamber, her uniform slightly disheveled, as if she'd rushed to arrive. "Admirals, council members, I have concerning information about the lunar sector." All eyes turned to the security chief as she activated the chamber's main display. A three-dimensional map of Earth's moon appeared, rotating slowly in the air. "We've detected an enormous energy signature near their lunar base," Su Jin reported, highlighting a region on the dark side of the moon. "But here's where it gets strange. Whenever we focus our primary sensors on that area, the signature completely vanishes. It's like looking at a blind spot." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Council technology was based on principles that had taken millennia to perfect. The idea that a primitive species could hide anything from their sensors was almost laughable. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Someone suggested. Su Jin shook her head. "The pattern is too regular, too precise. Whatever's causing this, it's artificial. And it's massive. When we do catch glimpses, the energy output rivals our largest space stations." Haynewell's hologram flickered again as she added, "This matches something odd that Admiral Tawan said. When I mentioned our sensor capabilities, he commented that sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight." Du Young stepped forward, his tall frame drawing all attention. "This is absurd. They're using nuclear fission for power generation. Their ships burn chemical fuel. How could they possibly possess technology capable of hiding anything from our sensors?" "Perhaps that's exactly what they want us to think," Su Jin suggested quietly. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Could this seemingly primitive species be engaged in an elaborate deception? But to what end? A junior officer rushed into the chamber, breaking protocol in his haste. "Sirs, we've just detected a massive object passing through the Jupiter sector." The main display shifted to show the gas giant. For a brief moment, something massive appeared on the sensors, larger than any council vessel, before vanishing completely. "Replay that," Du Yum ordered, his voice sharp. The footage played again. The object's outline was frustratingly unclear, but its size was undeniable. Whatever it was, it shouldn't exist, not in the space of a species that hadn't even mastered gravitic propulsion. "Ambassador Haynul," Du Yum addressed the hologram. "What exactly did Admiral Tawan say about their military capabilities?" "That's another oddity, sir," Haynul replied. "He didn't say much at all. He just mentioned that humanity had always preferred to keep their strongest cards close to their chest." Sujin's datapad chimed urgently. "Sir, we're detecting similar energy fluctuations near Mars now. Whatever's out there, it's moving in ways that should be impossible without gravitic engines." Do Young found himself in an uncomfortable position. His centuries of experience told him that humanity couldn't possibly possess technology advanced enough to challenge the Council. Yet every instinct warned him that they were missing something crucial. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should increase surveillance of the Earth sector. But discreetly, if they are hiding something." "Sir," Sujin interrupted, her voice tight with concern, "we can't increase surveillance. Over the past hour, our long-range sensors have been experiencing increasingly frequent failures. We're seeing less of Earth's space, not more." The chamber fell silent again, heavy with the weight of uncertainty. They had come to this system expecting to find another primitive species to guide or exploit. Instead, they found themselves dealing with a civilization that seemed to be playing a game whose rules they didn't understand. Du Young stared at the display, watching as another sensor ghost flickered near Mars before vanishing. Despite his earlier dismissal, a new thought began to form in his mind. What if they weren't dealing with a primitive species at all? What if humanity had simply chosen a different path of development, one that the Council, with all its advanced technology, couldn't even see? Alarms blared throughout the celestial dawn, their urgent wailing cutting through the tense atmosphere of the emergency council session. The crystalline walls of the chamber pulsed with red warning lights as tactical displays materialized in the air, showing multiple hostile signatures entering the Sol system. "Pirate vessels confirmed," announced the tactical officer, his fingers dancing across holographic controls, matching known signatures of the Blood Star fleet. 37 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. The council members, already on edge from the mysteries surrounding Earth, erupted into chaos. The Blood Star fleet, commanded by the notorious warlord Kita, was one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. Even council worlds, with their advanced defensive systems, fought twice before engaging them. Ambassador Haynul's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, her face grave. "They're targeting Earth. Our intelligence indicates Kita believes they'll be an easy conquest, a primitive world with valuable resources and no significant defense capabilities." Grand Admiral Du Young stood from his seat, his cybernetic eyes tracking the incoming fleet's trajectory. The pirates' approach was aggressive, showing no concern for stealth or subtlety. Why would they? As far as they knew, Earth was defenseless. "Their course is direct," Security Chief Sujin reported, her voice tight with tension. "Estimated time to weapons range of Earth, 6 hours." Lieutenant Jinnah entered the chamber, moving quickly to Du Young's side. "Sir, I've already contacted Earth's command structure." Admiral Ta-1 was unexpected in his response. "How so?" Du Young asked, though something in his gut told him he already knew. "I offered immediate council military assistance," Jinnah said, confusion evident in her voice. He declined. In fact, he seemed amused. The chamber fell silent. Even the most hardened council veterans struggled to understand this reaction. A pre-gravitic civilization, facing one of the most dangerous fleets in known space, was turning down help from the galaxy's most advanced society. "Show me the communication," Du Young ordered. A new hologram appeared, showing Admiral Ta Wun's face. The human admiral sat in what appeared to be a primitive command center, with basic electronic displays behind him. Yet his expression was one of calm confidence, almost reaching the point of amusement. "We appreciate the Council's offer of assistance," Ta Wun's recorded image said, his lips curved in a slight smile. "However, this situation provides an excellent opportunity to demonstrate that appearances can be deceiving. Please keep your forces at a safe distance. We wouldn't want any accidents." The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. "They can't be serious," one council member finally spoke. "They're going to face Kita's fleet alone. With their level of technology." Do Young's mind raced through the possibilities. The energy signatures near the moon, the sensor ghosts near Mars, the humans' persistent calm in the face of what should have been overwhelming technological superiority. "What if," he said slowly, "we've been asking the wrong questions? We've been so focused on what they can't do, we never stopped to consider what they might be hiding." As if in response to his words, the tactical displays suddenly flickered. New energy signatures were appearing around Earth's moon, massive ones, far larger than anything they'd detected before. "Sir," Su Jin called out, her voice urgent, "the lunar blind spot, it's changing." All eyes turned to the main display as space itself seemed to ripple around Earth's moon. The energy readings were off the scale, suggesting power sources that should have been impossible for human technology. "Lieutenant Jinnah," Du Young ordered, "get me another channel to Admiral Ta Wun. Now." But before Jinnah could comply, a new message arrived. The text was simple, but its implications were staggering. "To all vessels in Sol space, this is Earth Fleet Command. Please stand by to observe proper first contact protocols. The real Earth Navy is about to make its debut." Do Young stared at the message, then at the increasingly chaotic sensor readings around Earth's moon. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Genuine uncertainty about what was about to happen. Kita's fleet was about to learn what the Council had begun to suspect, that humanity's apparent primitive state might be the greatest deception in galactic history. "All Council vessels," Du Young commanded, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of experience, "maintain position and prepare to observe. I believe we're about to witness something unprecedented." The alarms continued to wail, but now they seemed to be heralding not just danger, but the arrival of something entirely unexpected. The galaxy's balance of power was about to shift, and it would begin here, in the space around a supposedly primitive planet called Earth. The Blood Star fleet cut through space like a swarm of predatory fish, their black hulls absorbing starlight as they approached Earth. Warlord Kita's flagship led the formation, its weapon systems already charging, ready to demonstrate why his fleet was feared across the galaxy. On the Celestial Dawn's observation deck, Grand Admiral Du Young watched the approaching fleet with growing tension. The pirate vessel's energy signatures blazed across their sensors. They weren't even trying to hide their approach. Why would they? They believed they were about to raid a helpless, primitive world. "All weapons are hot," Su Jin reported from her station. "They're preparing for their first volley. Impact on Earth's orbital defense stations in 3 minutes." Do Young's enhanced eyes tracked the pirate fleet's movement, but his mind was focused on the strange calm still emanating from Earth. No panic, no desperate pleas for help, not even any visible defensive movements. Just silence. Suddenly, the space between Earth and the pirate fleet began to change. At first, it was subtle, a slight distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then the distortion grew, spreading across space like ripples in a pond. Energy readings off the scale. Jinnah shouted, her hands flying across her console. "Something's happening." The ripples in space intensified, and then reality seemed to fold. Where there had been empty space, something massive began to appear. First came the bow, emerging like a leviathan rising from the depths. Then the main body materialized, section by section, each reveal adding to its impossible scale. Impossible, Du-Yum whispered, his cybernetic eyes struggling to process what they were seeing. Their stealth technology, it's beyond anything we've conceived. The vessel that had appeared dwarfed anything in the Council's fleet. Its hull was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No visible weapon ports marred its surface, but something about its design spoke of barely contained power. This was not the vessel of a primitive species. This was something else entirely. Sir, Jinnah's voice was barely a whisper. It's bigger than our largest battleship. The power readings, they're like nothing we've ever seen. Before anyone could respond, a transmission cut through all frequencies. A calm, confident voice filled every communication channel in the system. This is Captain Myray of the Earth Supercarrier constellation. You are in violation of Sol space. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. The pirate fleet's advance faltered. Even Kita's flagship seemed to hesitate, its weapon-charging sequence interrupted by the sudden appearance of this impossible vessel. More energy signatures. Su-Jin called out. They're appearing everywhere. Around the constellation, space continued to ripple and fold. More ships emerged from seemingly nowhere. Destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, each one displaying technology that should have been centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. Tracking systems are having trouble locking onto their hulls, Su-Jin reported, frustration evident in her voice. It's like they're partially out of phase with normal space. On the main display, they watched as Kita's fleet regrouped, turning their weapons toward the constellation. It was a brave show of force, or perhaps a foolish one. They're not going to, Jinnah started to say, but she was cut off by new movement from the constellation. Sections of the supercarrier's hull began to shift, revealing what appeared to be weapon systems unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. There were no obvious energy weapons, no missile tubes, just strange geometric patterns that seemed to bend the light around them. This is your final warning. Captain Myray's voice came again, still perfectly calm. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will demonstrate exactly why Earth has remained undisturbed for so long. Do-Young watched in fascination as the situation unfolded. Everything he thought he knew about technological progression, about humanity's capabilities, about the nature of space warfare itself, it was all being challenged in this moment. Sir, Jinnah said quietly, I think we're about to see why Admiral Tawan was so amused by our offer of help. The 30 seconds ticked by intense silence. Kita's fleet maintained their aggressive stance, weapons still charged. Perhaps they thought their numbers would give them an advantage. Perhaps they couldn't believe that a supposedly primitive species could pose a real threat. As the final second elapsed, Captain Myray's voice returned, this time with a hint of what might have been satisfaction. Very well. Constellation actual, weapons free. Show them what humanity can do. The geometric patterns on the supercarrier's hull began to glow with an inner light that seemed to bend reality itself. Do-Young realized he was about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. The moment when humanity revealed its true face to the stars. Everyone watching the battle held their breath as the constellation began to move. For a vessel of its enormous size, the way it maneuvered seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. It flowed through space like water, executing turns and position changes that should have torn any ship apart from internal stresses. Kita's fleet opened fire first, thousands of energy beams and projectiles streaming toward the Earth supercarrier. The space around the constellation shimmered, and the attacks seemed to pass through empty space, as if the ship had somehow shifted slightly out of reality at the moment of impact. Impossible, muttered one of the Council's quantum physicists, watching from the celestial dawn. They're using localized phase shifting. We theorized it centuries ago, but the power requirements. Before he could finish, the constellation launched its first counterattack. The geometric patterns on its hull pulsed with strange light, and suddenly space itself seemed to hiccup. Spheres of pure darkness emerged from the patterns, moving toward Kita's fleet with deliberate precision. Quantum torpedoes, Su-Jin breathed, her eyes wide. They've weaponized quantum uncertainty. The dark spheres passed straight through the pirates' energy shields as if they didn't exist. When they reached the ships, they simply phased through the hull plating. Moments later, entire sections of the pirate vessels went dark, their power systems somehow disconnected from reality itself. Kita's fleet attempted to regroup, launching fighters and adjusting their formation. But the Constellation's point defense systems responded with uncanny accuracy, shooting down threats before they had even fully launched. It was as if the Earth ship could see seconds into the future, knowing exactly where targets would be before they got there. Their combat computers, Jin-Ah observed, analyzing the data streaming across her console. They're not just predicting movements. They're calculating quantum probability states. They know where everything could be and respond to all possibilities simultaneously. The battle continued to unfold like a dance, but one where only one partner knew all the steps. Every time Kita's fleet tried to concentrate their fire, the Constellation would shift position in ways that should have been impossible. Every attempt to retreat was met with quantum torpedoes that ignored the laws of conventional physics. A desperate group of pirate cruisers attempted to rush the Earth vessel, hoping to overwhelm it with sheer numbers. The Constellation's response left everyone watching in stunned silence. The space around the attacking ships simply folded. When it unfolded, the pirates found themselves facing their own fleet, their momentum carrying them straight into their allies. Their mastery of space-time manipulation, Du Young said quietly, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. All these centuries, while we focused on conventional physics and energy manipulation, they were exploring an entirely different path. Within 3 hours, it was over. Kita's once mighty fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind dozens of disabled vessels drifting in space. The ships that could still move were fleeing at maximum speed, their crews likely still trying to understand what had just happened to them. The Constellation hung in space, its dark hull somehow seeming even more imposing after the display of its capabilities. Around it, smaller Earth vessels began appearing, dropping their stealth fields to assist with the cleanup operation. Their combat doctrine, Su-Jin observed, reviewing the battle data. It's like they've been preparing for this moment for centuries. Every move was practiced, precise. They knew exactly how to counter technologies they'd supposedly never seen before. Not preparing, Du Young corrected her, understanding finally dawning. They were waiting. All those centuries we thought they were primitive, they were watching, learning, developing countermeasures to every technology they observed in the galaxy. The council members watched as Earth vessels efficiently began securing disabled pirate ships, their crews moving with the confidence of those who had rehearsed these exact scenarios countless times. Sir, Jin-Ah reported, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Mireille. The captain's voice filled the command center, carrying the same calm confidence it had shown before the battle. Council vessels, you may be interested in observing our cleanup procedures. Consider it a gesture of professional courtesy. As they watched the Earth forces at work, Du Young couldn't help but think about how thoroughly they had underestimated humanity. They hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been perfecting it, waiting for the right moment to show the galaxy that appearances could be deceiving. The battle was over, but its implications were just beginning to ripple through the galaxy. Humanity had announced its presence not with words, but with a demonstration that would be remembered for centuries to come. The Celestial Dawn's main laboratory buzzed with activity as Chief Scientist Jeho placed another sample under the quantum microscope. Around him, dozens of council scientists worked frantically to understand the pieces of technology they'd been allowed to examine from the disabled pirate vessels, technology that had been fundamentally altered by Earth's weapons. Remarkable, Jeho muttered, adjusting the microscope's settings. The quantum torpedoes didn't just disable these systems, they rewrote the fundamental structure of the materials themselves. The laboratory door slid open, admitting Grand Admiral Du Young and several high-ranking council members. They had come for Jai-Ho's preliminary report, but the chief scientist barely noticed their entrance, too absorbed in his observations. "What have you found?" Du Young asked, his cybernetic eyes scanning the various experiments in progress around the lab. Jai-Ho finally looked up from his work, his face showing a mixture of excitement and concern. "Admiral, what we're seeing here, it challenges everything we thought we knew about technological progression." He gestured to a holographic display showing parallel timelines of technological development. Every spacefaring species we've encountered followed roughly the same path, mastering atomic energy, then developing gravitic propulsion, then achieving faster-than-light travel through conventional means. "But not the humans," one council member observed. "No," Jai-Ho confirmed, highlighting Earth's timeline. "While we were perfecting gravity manipulation and energy weapons, they took an entirely different approach. They dove deep into quantum mechanics, developing technologies that we had dismissed as theoretically impossible." He brought up detailed scans of the constellation's hull. "Look at this. Their stealth technology doesn't just bend light. It phases their entire vessels partially out of our reality. They're simultaneously there and not there, making them virtually impossible to detect or attack effectively." Du Young stepped closer to the display, studying the complex patterns. "How did they achieve this level of advancement without us noticing?" "They developed in isolation," Jai-Ho explained, pulling up more data. "Without exposure to other civilizations, they had no preconceptions about what was impossible. While we followed established patterns of technological development, they explored paths we never considered viable." The scientist moved to another workstation, where pieces of damaged pirate technology lay scattered. "Their quantum torpedoes, for instance. We theorized about weapons that could phase through shields centuries ago, but abandoned the research as impractical. The power requirements alone should have made it impossible. Yet they clearly made it work," another council member noted. "Because they approached the problem differently," Jai-Ho said, excitement creeping into his voice. "Instead of trying to brute force their way through the power requirements, they found ways to work with quantum uncertainty itself. Their weapons don't need massive power supplies because they're not fighting against reality. They're convincing reality to cooperate." He brought up video footage from the battle, showing the constellation's impossible maneuvers. "Even their propulsion systems operate on principles we barely understand. They're not pushing against space like our gravitic drives. They're negotiating with space-time itself, suggesting possibilities rather than forcing them." The implications slowly sank in around the room. Humanity hadn't just developed different technology. They had developed an entirely different way of thinking about technology itself. "There's more," Jai-Ho continued, his voice growing more serious. "Based on the sophistication of their systems and the precision of their battle tactics, they've had these capabilities for a long time, possibly centuries. They were watching us," Du Young realized, "learning about our technologies, developing countermeasures, all while maintaining the appearance of a primitive civilization." Jai-Ho nodded. "The level of coordination and planning required, it's unprecedented. Their entire civilization must have been unified in keeping this secret." He brought up one final display, showing energy readings from Earth's moon. "And I believe what we've seen is just the beginning. The energy signatures we detected suggest they have entire fleets hidden in quantum storage, ready to emerge at a moment's notice." The room fell silent as the full implications settled in. Humanity hadn't just surprised them with advanced technology. They had demonstrated a level of scientific achievement that challenged the Council's entire understanding of what was possible. "We need to completely reassess our approach to them," Du Young said finally. "They're not a primitive species to be guided. They're possibly the most advanced civilization we've ever encountered." Jai-Ho turned back to his quantum microscope, his voice thoughtful. "Admiral, I believe we need to ask ourselves a more fundamental question. If they achieve this much in isolation, what might be possible if we combined our knowledge with theirs? The question hung in the air, promising both incredible opportunities and significant challenges for the future of galactic civilization. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity, with representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to hear Grand Admiral Du Young's final report on the Earth situation. The crystalline walls reflected the light from countless stars, a reminder of the vast galaxy. It suddenly seemed much more mysterious than before. Du Young stood at the central podium, his silver uniform gleaming under the chamber's lights. The past weeks had aged him visibly, though his cybernetic eyes remained as sharp as ever. Before him, the assembled council members waited in tense silence. "Honored members of the council," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I stand before you today to admit that we were wrong. Not just about Earth, but about our fundamental understanding of technological progression." Holographic displays materialized around him, showing images of the constellation and its devastating battle with Kita's fleet. For millennia, we believed we understood how civilizations developed. We thought we could predict their path from primitive technology to advanced spacefaring capability. This assumption formed the basis of our entire approach to new species. He gestured to another display showing Earth's unusual development path. Humanity didn't develop inferior technology. They developed different technology. While we mastered gravitic propulsion, they explored quantum mechanics. While we perfected energy shields, they learned to phase shift entire vessels out of reality. But how are we to trust them? One council member interrupted. They deceived us about their capabilities for centuries. Ambassador Haynul, standing at the side of the chamber, stepped forward. Did they? They never claimed to be primitive. We assumed it, based on what they allowed us to see. Perhaps the deception was in our own minds. The chamber erupted in discussion until Du Young raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Haynul is correct. Our prejudices about technological development blinded us to what was right in front of us. New images appeared, showing Earth's rapid integration of previously disabled pirate vessels into their fleet. Their efficiency in adapting and improving upon captured technology was remarkable. Even now, they continue to surprise us. Du Young continued. Their engineers have already improved upon several systems they captured from Kita's fleet. They don't just understand our technology. They can enhance it in ways we never considered. The Admiral's next words fell into complete silence. We must accept that humanity is not a primitive species to be guided, but rather an advanced civilization that chose to develop along different paths. And now we must decide how to move forward. Ambassador Haynul smiled gently. Perhaps it's time we learned from them, instead of the other way around. They have already expressed interest in genuine technological and cultural exchange. Above Earth, visible through the chamber's transparent ceiling, the constellation hung in space like a dark sentinel. As the council watched, its hull began to shimmer with that now familiar distortion. Within moments, the massive vessel had vanished completely, leaving no trace of its presence. That, Du Young said, pointing to where the ship had been, is humanity's greatest strength. Not just their technology, but their ability to surprise. Their capacity to think differently, to explore paths others dismiss as impossible. He turned back to the council, his expression serious. I recommend we accept Earth's offer of equal partnership, not out of fear, but out of recognition that their unique perspective could help us all advance in ways we never imagined possible. The chamber remained silent for a long moment before the council's high speaker stood. The vote will commence. But before we begin, I have a question for Admiral Du Young. Do you believe humanity has shown us all of their capabilities? Du Young's cybernetic eyes flickered as he considered the question. Finally, he smiled slightly. No, I believe what we've seen is just the beginning. And that, honored members of the council, is exactly why we need them as allies rather than subordinates. As the voting began, Ambassador Haynul's communication device chimed softly. A message from Admiral Tadwan appeared. The galaxy is larger than any one species' understanding of it. Perhaps together, we can all learn to see things differently. The message ended with an invitation for a joint scientific expedition to explore phenomena that both Earth and Council scientists had previously deemed impossible. A new era was beginning, one where humanity's gift for surprising the galaxy might lead everyone to new frontiers of possibility. In Earth orbit, invisible to normal sensors, the constellation continued its patrol, a silent guardian of a civilization that had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to advance was to let others underestimate you until the right moment arrived. End of story.